They said the queen died at dawn. The bells of Valmont tolled for 3 hours straight, echoing through fog and stone. Monks in black robes carried candles down the cathedral steps, and the city fell silent. But the chronicles of Saint Hilda's convent tell a different story, one the court never meant to be written. According to those records, the queen's coffin was not as empty as her husband's heart. Inside lay a silk veil and a pair of gloves, nothing more. The body, they say, had been quietly carried out of the castle hours earlier. The woman the kingdom mourned was not dead, only reborn. Her story begins long before that dawn, when she was still a young bride, sent to marry a man twice her age, a king known for cruelty masked by charm. He ruled by fear and scripture. His queen was meant to smile, to bear sons, and to be silent. But the chronicles say she was not born to be silent. They describe her as clever, restless, and too curious for her own safety. That curiosity would one day save her life. For years, the royal marriage was a performance, a dance of obedience and humiliation. The king distrusted everyone, especially his young wife. He forbade her letters, isolated her from her ladies, and assigned spies to follow her through the corridors. Chroniclers wrote that her eyes lost their light, and that she was seen praying each morning before the chapel door ever opened. It was there she met a nun named Beatrix, a young novice who had once served at court. Beatrix carried messages from the convent to the palace and, over time, learned to slip them past the guards. It was she who would become the queen's link to the outside world, and later, her lifeline. The idea of escape was madness. Queens could not flee. They were property of the state, bound by God and law. But the idea of dying that could be arranged. In late winter, when the king left for a hunting trip, the queen began to feign illness. At first it was only fatigue, then fainting, then blood-stained linen burned in the hearth for show. The royal physicians were summoned. They wrote that she suffered from a wasting sickness of the spirit. She insisted she would die on the feast of St. Agnes, the patron of purity and lost girls. According to the convent ledger, a message arrived that week, sealed with black wax. It read simply, "Prepare a tomb, but not for the dead." At dawn on the feast, the queen drank a potion prepared by Beatrix opium and belladonna to still the pulse and cool the skin. Her servants screamed when her body fell limp. The priest crossed himself 3 times and declared her gone. Bells rang, banners fell, and the king, weeping in public for the first time, kissed her forehead. Her coffin was sealed before noon and carried to the royal crypt. That night, when torches burned low and the palace slept, 3 figures crept through the graveyard gate. The monks of Saint Hilda lifted the coffin lid and found her cold as stone but breathing faintly. When her eyes opened, she whispered, "Do not call me by that name again." By sunrise, the Queen of Valmont had vanished from history. For several weeks, the chronicles say, a veiled woman walked the back roads of the kingdom. She carried no jewels, only a rosary and a piece of parchment bearing the convent seal. Her hair was shorn short, her hands blistered from the cold. She ate what she could find: roots, berries, scraps of bread left at doorways. To travelers, she claimed to be a widow seeking sanctuary. No one recognized her. The sickness and days of hunger had erased the noble softness from her face. At the gates of Saint Hilda's, the abbess herself received her. "God welcomes all lost souls," she said. The woman bowed her head. "Then he will know mine well," she answered. Within the convent she became Sister Helena, though no vows were spoken aloud. She spent her days in silence, working the gardens, tending to the sick, and joining the prayers at dusk. For the first time, she tasted freedom, the bitter kind that comes without safety. But peace never lasts long when kings have nightmares. Weeks after her disappearance, strange tales reached the convent. The king, it was said, refused to enter his chapel. He claimed he saw his wife in the shadows, watching him from the corner of the room. Servants whispered of footsteps in her empty chambers and a scent of lavender where none should linger. "His Majesty is haunted," wrote one court chronicler, "and the dead queen walks again." Superstition turned to panic. The people began leaving flowers at her statue, praying to her as if she were a saint. The king forbade it, yet the offerings multiplied. He started sleeping in armor, clutching his sword through the night. When he fell ill months later, he muttered that she came to him each dawn, smiling. In truth, the queen was alive and listening. The convent kept no visitors, but merchants, pilgrims, and soldiers often stopped to pray. Through their gossip, she learned of the rumors spreading across the land, and of the man who once called her his jewel, now losing his mind. In one letter found centuries later, she wrote, "He made me a ghost before I died. Now I live more freely as one." As years passed, the legend of the living queen became part of local folklore. Some said she wandered the palace gardens in a blood-red gown. Others swore she appeared beside the sick, offering comfort before death. The church tried to suppress these tales, but stories spread faster than sermons. Meanwhile, in Saint Hilda's, Sister Helena aged quietly. Her hands grew crooked from work, her voice thin from chanting psalms. Only the abbess suspected who she had once been. During confession, she once asked, "If a woman dies to escape sin, is she reborn in it?" The abbess replied, "If God gave her the courage, perhaps it was his will." When Helena died, the convent records say she was buried with a single item, a golden ring engraved with the royal seal of Valmont. The abbess ordered the grave left unmarked for her peace, the note reads. After her passing, strange light was said to appear in the chapel each year on the feast of St. Agnes, flickering like candles where no candles burned. Centuries later, a fire consumed most of the convent. When workers cleared the ruins, they uncovered a hidden stone vault beneath the floor of the old chapel. Inside lay a wooden chest wrapped in linen. Inside the chest a veil, still faintly perfumed, and a folded letter. The letter read, "To the world I died obedient. To myself I lived forgiven. If freedom is sin, then let heaven judge me kindly." Historians argued for decades whether the handwriting matched that of the lost Queen of Valmont. The pigment of the ink, the weave of the silk, even the Latin phrasing aligned with royal documents of her time. But the church never confirmed the discovery. They simply called it the testimony of the unnamed sister. Still, among archivists and storytellers, the belief persisted. The queen who vanished had outwitted both crown and death, and left behind her confession for those brave enough to read it. Today, the ruins of Saint Hilda's stand on a quiet hill above the river. Only one stained glass window survived the fire, the one showing a veiled woman stepping out of a coffin, her eyes open, her face serene. Locals call her the living queen. Every spring, sunlight passes through that window and strikes a single spot on the chapel floor, the place believed to hold the unmarked grave. Visitors leave wildflowers there, not because they believe in ghosts, but because they understand what it means to break a crown's chains. History remembers kings for the wars they started, but sometimes it's the silence of a vanished woman that outlives them all.